The Great Assembly Hall floated in space above Zentara Prime, a massive structure that had witnessed 1,000 years of galactic history. Inside, representatives from 300 different species gathered under the soft glow of artificial light. Some breathed oxygen, like humans did. Others required different atmospheres and sat in specialized chambers. The air hummed with translation devices working constantly, turning thousands of languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood at the center platform, waiting for his turn to speak. He wore a simple dark suit, nothing fancy. Beside him sat Commander Amy Chen, her military uniform crisp and professional. Dr. Ben Carter adjusted his glasses nervously, reviewing his notes one more time. Captain Laura Hayes remained perfectly still, her eyes scanning the enormous chamber with the practiced awareness of a career officer. Humans had been part of this galactic community for 47 years, in a civilization that measured time in millennia, that made them newcomers. Barely worth noticing. Earth had one vote among 300. One small voice in an ocean of ancient civilizations. The Senate Archon, a being so old that his species' name was almost forgotten, gestured for Jake to begin. His form shimmered with an energy that humans still didn't fully understand. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Jake stepped forward and activated his presentation. Holographic images appeared in the air, showing Earth's solar system, human ships, research facilities, and technological developments. Honored delegates, Jake began, his voice calm and clear. Humanity comes before this Senate with a proposal. We wish to establish a mutual defense and research treaty with any interested parties. Over the past 47 years, we have developed several technologies that we believe could benefit the wider galactic community. In exchange, we hope to learn from your civilizations and build lasting partnerships. The hologram shifted, showing human innovations. Medical diagnostic tools that could detect diseases earlier than most galactic standard equipment. Energy shielding, with a different approach than traditional designs. Navigation systems that calculated jump routes using methods Earth's mathematicians had pioneered. We understand we are young in galactic terms, Jake continued. But we believe that fresh perspectives can complement ancient wisdom. We offer these technologies freely to any who wish to collaborate with us in research and mutual protection. The first laugh came from the Velkari section. It started as a low rumble, then grew louder. The Velkari were a powerful species, their scales gleaming under the chamber lights. They had weapons that could crack planets and ships that had ruled their sector for 10,000 years. Mutual defense? The Velkari delegate stood, his voice dripping with amusement. What could humans possibly offer us in defense? Your ships are barely capable of traveling between systems. Your weapons are primitive chemical and nuclear devices. We have been waging wars since before your species learned to make fire. More laughter rippled through the chamber. The Zentii representative, a being of pure thought housed in a crystalline form, projected its amusement directly into the minds of everyone present. Human research? We have libraries older than your civilization. What could you possibly teach us? Even the Rethians joined in, and that stung a bit more. Humans had considered the Rethians friends. They were gentle, plant-based beings who valued cooperation. But even they seemed to find the proposal absurd. Amy Chen's jaw tightened slightly, but she didn't move. Ben Carter looked down at his notes, his face flushing red. Laura Hayes simply watched, her expression unreadable. Jake Morrison stood quietly, waiting for the laughter to die down. He didn't argue. He didn't defend. He simply waited. The Senate Archon raised one shimmering appendage, and silence gradually returned. Ambassador Morrison, he said, his tone carrying the weight of ages. Your enthusiasm is noted. However, this Senate believes that humanity should focus on learning from the galactic community for now. Perhaps in another few centuries, when your civilization has matured, such proposals would be more appropriate. Consider this a learning experience. Watch, listen, and grow. That is the advice of this ancient body. There was no vote, no formal rejection, just a dismissal, gentle but absolute. The Archon moved on to the next item on the agenda, without waiting for a response. Jake Morrison gathered his materials slowly. Amy Chen stood, her movements precise and controlled. Ben Carter closed his folder with hands that shook slightly, though whether from embarrassment or anger, no one could tell. Laura Hayes followed them, her military bearing perfect. As they walked toward the exit, conversations had already resumed around them. The Velkari were discussing a mining dispute with the Trallians. The Genti were presenting research on dimensional mathematics. The business of the galaxy moved forward. Jake paused at the great doors of the chamber and turned back. He bowed, a gesture of respect that was part of human diplomatic tradition. Amy, Ben, and Laura bowed with him. Then they turned and left, their footsteps making no sound on the polished floor. No one in the chamber noticed them go. The Senate had already forgotten about the human proposal. It was such a small thing, barely worth the 10 minutes they'd given it. The human delegation walked through the corridors of the station in complete silence. They boarded their small ship without speaking. As they prepared to leave, Amy Chen finally broke the quiet. "I warned them this would happen," she said softly. Jake nodded, settling into the pilot's seat. "You did, but we had to try." "What now?" Ben asked. Jake started the launch sequence. Through the viewport, they could see the massive Senate station, with ships from 100 different species coming and going. It was beautiful in its way, this center of galactic civilization. "Now we go home," Jake said simply. "We tell Earth what happened. And then, we see what humanity decides to do next." The ship pulled away from the station, turned toward the distant Sol system, and jumped into faster-than-light travel. Behind them, the Senate continued its business, unaware that anything significant had just occurred. But something had changed, even if no one realized it yet. Humans had offered partnership and been laughed at. Now they would make a different choice entirely, one that would echo across the galaxy in ways no one could have predicted. The journey home was quiet. There was nothing left to say. 3 weeks after the Senate meeting, Nick Parker sat in his small office on the Velkari homeworld and typed out his resignation letter. He kept it professional and brief. After 6 years of managing trade logistics between the Velkari colonies and the Outer Rim stations, he had learned exactly how the Velkari preferred their communications. "To the Colonial Trade Authority," he wrote. "Please accept this as my formal notice of resignation. Effective 30 days from today, I will complete all current contracts and ensure a smooth transition of my responsibilities. Thank you for the opportunity to serve. Respectfully, Nick Parker." He sent the message and began packing his belongings. His Velkari supervisor appeared at his door within an hour, confusion evident in the tilt of his scaled head. "Is something wrong, Parker? Have we offended you in some way?" Nick smiled and shook his head. "Not at all. I've just decided it's time to go home. Personal reasons." The Velkari didn't press further. Humans were strange anyway, emotional and unpredictable. If this one wanted to leave, so be it. They would find a replacement. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Dr. Kate Sullivan finished her final report on the Rethian agricultural project she had been managing for 4 years. The modified crop rotation system she had designed was working perfectly, feeding 3 colony worlds with 90% efficiency. She submitted the report, thanked her Rethian colleagues, and politely declined the offer to renew her contract. "But the next phase needs your expertise," her supervisor pleaded. "No one else understands these systems like you do." Kate smiled gently. "All the documentation is in the system. Anyone with basic agricultural training can follow it. You'll be fine." Greg Matthews closed his fusion reactor installation business methodically, starting with the smallest contracts and working his way up. He fulfilled every single obligation, finished every project he had promised to complete. His clients were disappointed, but couldn't complain. He had done exactly what he said he would do. Nothing more and nothing less. On Earth, President Lisa Monroe held a brief press conference. The room was packed with reporters, both human and alien correspondents from the galactic news networks. President Monroe, a human reporter asked. There are reports that thousands of humans are leaving their positions throughout the galaxy. Is this some kind of organized protest against the Senate's rejection of Ambassador Morrison's proposal? Lisa Monroe looked directly into the cameras, her expression calm and professional. Humans across the galaxy are simply choosing to come home and focus on building our own civilization for a while. Every individual is making their own choice. But many feel that Earth could benefit from having its people closer to home. We have much work to do here. Number. Are you punishing the galactic community? Another reporter pressed. Absolutely not, Monroe replied. We're not punishing anyone. We're just choosing to turn our attention inward. It's a perfectly reasonable decision for any civilization to make. An alien correspondent stood. Does this mean humanity is withdrawing from the Galactic Senate entirely? No, Monroe said firmly. We will maintain our seat and our diplomatic presence. We will continue to honor all existing treaties and agreements. But individual humans who have been working throughout the galaxy are choosing to come home, and we support that choice. The press conference ended, and the Galactic News Network ran a brief story about the human withdrawal. Most species barely noticed. Humans had been such a quiet presence in galactic affairs, working in small numbers across countless worlds. Their absence seemed insignificant, but some people noticed the gaps. A Rethian restaurant owner named Tellux watched his business drop by half within 2 weeks. He couldn't understand it at first. Then he realized that his human chef, a woman named Kelly who had worked for him for 3 years, was gone. Kelly had created fusion dishes that combined Rethian and Earth cuisines in ways that attracted customers from 6 different species. Without her, the food was just ordinary. On a Velkari mining station, accidents started happening with alarming frequency. The station manager reviewed the safety logs and discovered that every safety protocol that actually worked had been designed by their human consultant, Greg Matthews. The Velkari engineers had dismissed many of his suggestions as overly cautious. Now, without his regular inspections and adjustments, those unnecessary safety measures were proving to be the only thing preventing disasters. A ZenTI research station had been working on understanding quantum fluctuations in dimensional space. Their human liaison, Dr. Ben Carter, had left 3 weeks ago. The ZenTI researchers continued their work, confident in their superiority, but progress slowed to a crawl. When they reviewed their breakthrough moments over the past year, they found something troubling. 7 major insights had come from casual suggestions Ben had made during meetings, observations the Genti had barely acknowledged at the time. The communications specialist on the Galactic Trade Hub noticed that message errors between different species had increased by 40%. She investigated and found that humans had been serving as informal translators and mediators for dozens of language pairs. They had a knack for understanding the nuances that translation software missed. Without them, misunderstandings multiplied. These were isolated observations, scattered across hundreds of worlds. No one connected them into a pattern yet. The galaxy was vast, and humans were just one small species among 300. But the pattern was there, spreading slowly like cracks in ice. Nick Parker arrived back on Earth and was surprised by the welcome he received. Thousands of other humans were returning too, and the spaceports were full of reunions. People hugged family members they hadn't seen in years. They talked excitedly about new projects, about building things on Earth, about focusing their talents and energy on their own world. Dr. Kate Sullivan took a position at Earth's new Agricultural Research Center. Greg Matthews started teaching at the Engineering Academy, sharing his knowledge with the next generation of human engineers. Others found work in Earth's expanding industries, research facilities, and development projects. The mood wasn't angry or bitter. It was energized, focused. Humanity had been spreading its efforts thin across the galaxy, contributing here and there in small ways. Now, all that energy was coming home, concentrated in one place. Commander Amy Chen stood in the Earth Defense Command Center, watching the data streams showing human ships returning from across the galaxy. Captain Laura Hayes stood beside her. "They're not all coming back," Laura observed. "Some are staying." "Yes," Amy agreed. "The ones who truly love where they are, who've built real lives out there. That's fine. This was never about forcing everyone home. It's about giving people a choice and making sure Earth is strong enough that coming home is attractive." Laura nodded slowly. "Do you think the Senate understands what's happening?" Amy smiled slightly. "Not yet, but they will." Across the galaxy, the quiet exodus continued. No protests, no demands, no anger. Just thousands of individual humans making the same choice: to go home. 6 months after the human departure, the Galactic Trade Commission released its quarterly security report. The data was alarming. Pirate attacks along the Terran trade routes had increased by 312%. Shipping losses were mounting. Insurance rates had tripled. The commission head, a methodical Centaurian named Vex, called an emergency meeting to discuss the crisis. Representatives from shipping companies across the galaxy gathered via holographic link. "The question is simple," Vex stated. "Why are the Terran routes suddenly so dangerous? These corridors have been stable for decades." A shipping executive from the Valkyrie Consortium pulled up historical data. According to these records, there were regular patrol ships along these routes. Small vessels, minimal weaponry, but present consistently. He paused, his scales shifting color with realization. They were human ships. Private security contractors, mostly. They didn't report to anyone or ask for payment. They just patrolled. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. Humans had been quietly protecting those trade routes for years, never making a fuss about it, never demanding recognition. Now they were gone, and the pirates had noticed. Vex cleared his throat. "Has anyone attempted to contact these human contractors?" "I sent a message to the main coordinator," the Valkyrie executive said. "A man named Jake Morrison, who apparently works for Earth's diplomatic service now," he replied. Within an hour, very polite. He explained that all human military and security assets have been recalled to the Sol system for home defense purposes. He wished us luck with our security challenges. Did he ask for payment to resume patrols? No. He didn't ask for anything. He just said no. Vex felt a creeping unease, a demand he could negotiate with, a price he could meet. But simple refusal? That was much harder to address. The problems extended far beyond trade route security. On the medical station orbiting Rethia 4, Dr. Yenna faced a crisis. The diagnostic software that had been running perfectly for 3 years suddenly started giving inconsistent results. Patients were being misdiagnosed. Simple conditions were being missed. She called in the station's technical team, but they couldn't find the problem. The software appeared to be functioning normally. Finally, the chief technician made an uncomfortable discovery. "Doctor, this software was designed by humans. Specifically, by a woman named Dr. Kate Sullivan. She integrated it with our existing systems, but she also provided regular updates and adjustments, small modifications based on the specific patient populations we see here. The base software works, but without those modifications, it's only about 60% effective. Can't we continue making those modifications ourselves?" Yenna asked. The technician shook his head. "We could, if we understood the underlying logic. But Dr. Sullivan's approach was completely different from standard galactic medical software design. We would need months, maybe years, to fully understand it. And even then, we might not match her results." Yenna submitted a formal request to Earth's Medical Services Division, asking if Dr. Sullivan could provide remote consultation. The response came back within a day. "Professional, and polite. Dr. Sullivan was currently engaged in research projects on Earth and was not available for external consultation. They wished the Raytheon Medical Station success in their endeavors. On Valkyrie Prime, Greg Matthews' warning finally proved prophetic. The main power plant for the capital city experienced a catastrophic failure. 3 people died, and an entire district lost power for 6 days. The investigation revealed that the plant had been using a modified version of Matthews's reactor design. But the Valkyrie engineers had removed several safety features they considered excessive and inefficient. The plant manager, whose name was Krell, found himself in front of an inquiry board. He defended his decisions weakly. The human design was overly cautious. The safety margins were far beyond necessary levels. We optimized the system for better output. Problem. 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 And now 3 workers are dead, the inquiry leader stated coldly. Do you have Matthew's contact information? Can we bring him back to review our power systems? Krell had tried already. Matthews had responded politely, explaining that he was now teaching at Earth's Engineering Academy and was not available for consulting work. He had offered to send copies of his original design specifications, free of charge, but he would not be coming back. The Galactic Communications Network started experiencing severe degradation. Messages between certain species became garbled, leading to diplomatic incidents. An important treaty negotiation between the Zentii and the Trallians nearly collapsed due to a mistranslated phrase that caused deep offense. The network administrator discovered that humans had been serving as intermediary translators for 62 different language pairs. They had a unique ability to understand context and nuance, smoothing communication between species that the automated systems couldn't quite bridge. Without them, the subtle errors multiplied. Commander Amy Chen received the first official communication from the Galactic Senate 6 months and 3 days after the human delegation had left. It wasn't addressed to her specifically, but to Earth's military command structure. The message was carefully worded, avoiding any hint of apology or acknowledgement of past dismissal. The Galactic Senate requests that Earth consider resuming voluntary security patrols along the Terran trade routes. These patrols would be appreciated by the galactic community and would demonstrate Earth's commitment to interstellar cooperation. Amy read the message 3 times, then called a meeting with Captain Laura Hayes, Jake Morrison, and President Lisa Monroe. They're asking us to go back to doing what we were doing before, Amy said, protecting their trade routes for free. But notice they're not apologizing for mocking us. They're not acknowledging that they need us. They're just requesting that we resume our voluntary service. Jake leaned back in his chair. How do we respond? President Monroe spoke carefully. We respond politely. We explain that Earth has made a strategic decision to focus our military resources on home system defense. We're not refusing to help out of spite. We're simply allocating our limited resources differently. We wish them well with their security challenges. They won't like that, Laura observed. No, Monroe agreed. But what can they do? Order us to help them? We're not breaking any laws. We're not threatening anyone. We're just staying home. Amy drafted the response, keeping it professional and courteous. She sent it and waited. The reply came faster than expected. This time, it was from the Senate Archon himself. The message was longer, more detailed. It pointed out the benefits of galactic cooperation, the importance of maintaining strong relationships, the value of contributing to the greater good. But still, there was no apology, no acknowledgement that the Senate had been wrong. Amy filed the message without responding immediately. Around Earth, life continued. Human engineers worked on new projects. Human scientists pursued research that interested them. Human teachers educated the next generation. The energy and talent that had been scattered across 300 worlds was now concentrated on one. Across the galaxy, the problems continued to mount. Small things, mostly. A restaurant that wasn't as good as it used to be. A safety system that didn't work quite right. A translation that missed the mark. Individually, these were minor inconveniences, but they were adding up, creating a picture that some in the galaxy were beginning to see clearly. Humans hadn't been background noise. They had been the oil that kept the machine running smoothly. And now that oil was gone. 1 year after the human departure, a Genti research team published a report that sent shockwaves through the Galactic Senate. The report was titled simply, Economic Analysis of Human Integration in Galactic Society. Its conclusions were devastating. The lead researcher, a crystalline intelligence named Thex, presented the findings to a packed Senate chamber. The holographic displays showed networks of connections spreading across the galaxy like a web. Our team has spent 6 months analyzing the scope of human involvement in galactic affairs. Thex began, his thoughts projecting clearly to all present. When Ambassador Morrison proposed a partnership treaty 1 year ago, this body dismissed humans as inconsequential. Our research shows that this assessment was catastrophically incorrect. CUT. HFT. 1 Ambassador. The display shifted, showing thousands of connection points. Each one represented a human working somewhere in the galaxy, doing something that seemed small and insignificant. Humans were involved in 17,463 distinct economic, technological, and social activities across the galaxy. Most of these activities were so mundane that no one paid attention to them. A human running a restaurant. A human managing shipping logistics. A human providing safety consulting. A human teaching mathematics to children on a colony world. Thex paused, letting the number sink in. 17,000 activities. From a species that represented less than 1% of the galactic population. But here is the critical finding, Thex continued. These activities were not random. Humans consistently positioned themselves in bridging roles. They connected different species, different technologies, different ways of thinking. They served as translators, mediators, integrators, and facilitators. They made the galaxy work better. And they did it so quietly that no one noticed. The Senate chamber was completely silent. Even the usual background noise of translation devices and whispered conversations had stopped. Let me give you specific examples, Thex said. Nick Parker managed trade logistics between the Velkari colonies and the Outer Rim. He coordinated the delivery of medical supplies to 62 different stations. When he left, those supply chains collapsed. It took 4 months for the Velkari to even understand what he had been doing, and they still haven't fully replaced his systems. 7 stations experienced critical medical supply shortages. 2 people died. The Velkari delegation shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Kate Sullivan designed agricultural systems for 4 Rethian colony worlds. Those systems continue to function, but crop yields have dropped by 30%. Why? Because she made regular small adjustments based on changing conditions. Adjustments so subtle that the Rethians didn't realize she was making them. Without those adjustments, the systems are degrading. The Rethian representative looked down, his plant-like form drooping slightly. Greg Matthews installed safety systems in industrial facilities across 9 worlds. Since his departure, industrial accidents have increased by 270%. His designs were mocked as overcautious. Now, facilities are discovering that his excessive safety margins were actually minimum requirements for stable operation. Thex brought up more examples. Humans who had mediated disputes between species, preventing conflicts before they started. Humans who had shared research insights that seemed obvious to them but were revolutionary to others. Humans who had simply made life easier for those around them in 1,000 small ways. Our conclusion is unavoidable, Thex stated. Humans were not peripheral to galactic society. They were integral to it. They made themselves valuable not through dominance or political power, but through consistent, quiet competence. And when they left, they revealed how much we had come to depend on them. The Senate Archon sat motionless for a long moment. Finally, he spoke, his ancient voice carrying a weight of reluctant acceptance. This report will be distributed to all member species. We must discuss how to address this situation. In the following weeks, Earth received delegations from 43 different species. They came one by one, sometimes in small groups. Each had the same basic request. Please send your people back. We need them. President Lisa Monroe met with every delegation personally. She listened politely to their requests, their offers, their explanations of how important it was that humans return to their previous positions. The Valkyrie offered triple the standard wages for trade coordinators and industrial consultants. Monroe thanked them for their generous offer, but explained that money wasn't the issue. Humans were simply choosing to work on Earth right now. The Rethians sent a heartfelt plea, describing the food shortages their colonies were experiencing. Monroe expressed genuine sympathy and offered to sell them Earth-grown food at standard market rates. But she couldn't order Dr. Sullivan to go back. It was Kate's choice. And Kate had chosen to stay on Earth. A delegation of shipping companies offered to pay for human security patrols along the trade routes. Monroe explained patiently that Earth's defense fleet was occupied with home system security. She suggested they hire security from other species or invest in better defensive technology. Some delegations tried subtler approaches. They spoke of the importance of interstellar friendship, of humanity's responsibility to the galactic community, of the moral obligation to help those in need. Monroe listened to it all with patience and grace. Then she would gently point out that humans had been helping for years, working for standard wages or even volunteering their time. They had offered formal partnership and been laughed at. Now they were simply focusing on their own development. There was nothing unreasonable about that. A few delegations hinted at consequences if humans didn't return. Trade restrictions, perhaps, reduced diplomatic status. Monroe's response to these veiled threats was calm but firm. Earth had broken no laws and violated no treaties. Humanity was simply exercising its right to determine how its own people lived and worked. Any punitive measures would be seen as exactly what they were: retaliation. For humans choosing to stay home, the Senate held an emergency session to discuss potential responses. The debate lasted for 3 days. Some argued for economic pressure. Others suggested offering major concessions to bring humans back. A few voices called for accepting the situation and adapting without human help. In the end, the Senate took no action. They couldn't force humans to return, and punishing Earth would only make things worse. They were trapped by their own earlier dismissal. They had treated humans as insignificant, and now they couldn't admit how much they needed them without looking foolish. On Earth, life continued to improve. The concentration of human talent and energy was producing remarkable results. New technologies emerged from research centers that now had their best people working together instead of scattered across the galaxy. Educational institutions thrived with experienced teachers returning home. Infrastructure projects moved forward with unprecedented speed. Commander Amy Chen stood in the observation deck of Earth's orbital station, watching construction crews work on a new defensive platform. Captain Laura Hayes joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "The Valkyrie delegation left this morning," Laura said, handing Amy a cup. "I imagine so," Amy replied. "They want us to solve their problems. But they don't want to admit they were wrong about us. Do you think they'll ever apologize?" Amy considered the question. "Eventually, yes. When they realize that pride is costing them more than admitting a mistake. But it might take a while." Round. "And when they do apologize? When they offer real partnership instead of just asking us to go back to how things were?" Amy smiled slightly. "Then we'll listen. Genuine respect deserves a genuine response. But we'll never be invisible again. We'll never be taken for granted again. They'll remember the year we were gone." Laura nodded slowly, sipping her coffee. "Silence can be powerful." "Yes," Amy agreed. "Sometimes the loudest statement is saying nothing at all." 18 months after the Senate meeting where humanity's proposal had been dismissed with laughter, Ambassador Jake Morrison received a formal message from the Galactic Senate. The wording was different this time, carefully chosen, respectful. The Galactic Senate extends an invitation to Ambassador Jake Morrison and the human delegation to attend a special session regarding renewed partnership opportunities. We would be honored by your presence and input on matters of mutual interest. An invitation, not a summons. Honored by your presence, not expecting your attendance. The language mattered. Jake read it 3 times before calling President Monroe. They're ready to talk, he said simply. Are we ready to listen? Monroe asked. I think so. But we go with clear terms. No more being invisible. No more being taken for granted. Monroe agreed. Choose your delegation carefully. This sets the tone for the next century of human involvement in galactic affairs. Jake assembled his team. Commander Amy Chen would join him, of course. Her strategic mind had guided humanity through this entire situation. Captain Laura Hayes would represent Earth's military interests. Dr. Ben Carter would speak to scientific collaboration. And he added 2 more. Nick Parker, the trade coordinator who had been one of the first to leave, and Dr. Kate Sullivan, whose agricultural work had left such a visible gap. They arrived at the Senate station 2 weeks later. The reception was noticeably different. The docking coordinator personally welcomed them. The station administrator met them at the airlock. Small gestures, but meaningful ones. The Senate chamber was full when they entered. Every species had sent representatives. The atmosphere was tense, expectant. Jake noticed that the seating had been rearranged. The human delegation was no longer in the back corner. They had been moved to a position of prominence, closer to the center. The Senate Archon rose, his ancient form shimmering with an energy that seemed more subdued than before. When he spoke, his voice carried none of the dismissive certainty from 18 months ago. Ambassador Morrison, members of the human delegation, welcome. This Senate wishes to address events of the past 18 months. We have learned much in your absence, and we have conclusions to share. The Archon paused, and Jake realized the old being was choosing his words carefully. 18 months ago, humanity proposed a partnership treaty. This Senate rejected that proposal, dismissing it as premature and unnecessary. We were wrong. A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. Admissions of error were rare in the Senate. We failed to recognize the value of human contributions to galactic society. We failed to appreciate the many ways, large and small, that your people had integrated themselves into our civilization. We failed to understand that youth and wisdom are not opposites, that fresh perspectives can be as valuable as ancient knowledge. For these failures, this Senate offers its formal apology. Jake felt Amy tense beside him. This was more than they had expected. We now understand what was lost when humans withdrew, the Archon continued. We understand that partnership is not a privilege we grant, but a relationship of mutual respect and benefit. Therefore, this Senate wishes to formally accept the partnership treaty that Ambassador Morrison proposed 18 months ago, with modifications to ensure equal standing and appropriate recognition of human contributions. The Archon gestured, and a holographic document appeared in the air. Jake scanned it quickly. Then, more carefully, the treaty granted humans full partnership status, seats on 7 major Senate committees, formal recognition of Earth as a sovereign territory with complete autonomy, and establishment of collaborative research and defense agreements. It was everything they had asked for. And more. This Senate also proposes additional measures, the Archon said. Formal recognition of human technological contributions, with appropriate credit and intellectual property protections. Establishment of cultural exchange programs. Creation of a joint task force to address the economic and social challenges that arose during the human absence. And most importantly, a commitment to never again dismiss the contributions of any species, regardless of their age, in galactic terms. Jake stood slowly. The human delegation appreciates this proposal and the apology that accompanies it. We request a recess to review the treaty terms in detail and consult with our government. Of course, the Archon agreed immediately. Take whatever time you need. And well, the human delegation withdrew to a private chamber. For 2 hours, they reviewed every clause, every implication. They consulted with President Monroe via secure communication. Finally, they reached consensus. When they returned to the chamber, Jake spoke clearly. Earth accepts this partnership treaty, with the understanding that humans will participate in galactic society as equals, not as junior members seeking approval. Our contributions will be recognized, our sovereignty will be respected, and our people will be valued for what they bring to the community. Agreed, the Archon said immediately. The vote was unanimous. 300 species voting yes, accepting humans as full partners. The contrast with 18 months ago could not have been more stark. In the weeks that followed, humans began returning to their positions throughout the galaxy. But everything was different now. Dr. Kate Sullivan went back to Rethia, but this time with a formal contract that recognized her expertise and compensated her appropriately. The Rethians didn't just accept her agricultural recommendations anymore. They studied them, learned from them, and publicly credited her innovations. Greg Matthews reopened his consulting business. His first client was the Velkari government, which asked him to review every industrial facility on their homeworld. They followed his safety recommendations exactly, without modification. The accident rate dropped to near zero within 3 months. Nick Parker rebuilt his trade coordination network, but now with proper support, adequate compensation, and official recognition of his role in keeping supply chains functional. The shipping companies that had taken his work for granted now treated him as an essential partner. Captain Laura Hayes led the Earth Defense Fleet back to patrol duty along the trade routes. But now those patrols were part of a formal security agreement, with costs shared among the species who benefited from protected shipping lanes. Human ships were acknowledged as partners, not invisible volunteers. The changes went deeper than formal agreements. Humans were no longer invisible in galactic society. When a human entered a room, others paid attention. When a human made a suggestion, others listened, not out of fear or obligation, but out of hard-earned respect. 6 months after the treaty signing, Jake Morrison attended a Senate session about disputed mining rights. A young species, recently admitted to the Senate, proposed a solution that the older civilizations immediately dismissed as naive. Jake caught the eye of the Velkari delegate, who had been one of the loudest voices mocking humans 18 months ago. The Velkari looked uncomfortable, clearly remembering how that had worked out. He called for a recess to properly review the young species proposal. Amy Chen watched from Earth as human ships, scientists, teachers, and workers spread back across the galaxy. But the flow wasn't one way anymore. Alien species were coming to Earth too, studying at human universities, collaborating in research facilities, learning from human approaches to problems. Do you think they've really learned the lesson? Laura Hayes asked, standing beside Amy in the observation deck. Some have, Amy replied. Others will need reminders. But the galaxy is better for what happened. Not just for humans, but for everyone. The Senate had become comfortable in its certainty, its ancient hierarchies. We showed them that value comes in many forms, and wisdom isn't the exclusive property of old civilizations. By walking away with dignity, Amy corrected. We didn't attack. We didn't threaten. We didn't rage against the injustice. We simply removed ourselves from a situation where we weren't valued. And, in doing so, we showed them exactly how much they had to lose. Laura smiled. Quiet competence over loud demonstration. No, always, Amy agreed. Let your work speak for you. Let your absence speak louder. The galaxy continued its ancient dance of politics, trade, research, and civilization. Humans were part of that dance now. Genuine partners, rather than background performers. the Senate had laughed when humanity proposed partnership. They had panicked when humans departed. And they had learned, finally, that the quietest voice in the chamber might also be the most essential. On Earth, in a simple office, President Lisa Monroe reviewed reports of human activities across the galaxy. Trade networks functioning smoothly. Research collaborations producing breakthroughs. Cultural exchanges enriching both sides. Security partnerships keeping the peace. She smiled and closed the reports. Humanity had taken a risk, walking away from galactic society for 18 months. But that risk had paid off in ways beyond measure, not just in formal recognition or treaty terms, but in something more fundamental: respect. Earth had learned a valuable lesson about power. True strength wasn't in forcing others to acknowledge you. It was in being so valuable that your absence created a void no one else could fill. It was in maintaining your dignity when dismissed. It was in walking away from disrespect without anger or bitterness. And most importantly, it was in knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. The galaxy had learned too. They had learned that underestimating the quiet ones was a mistake. That dismissing new voices meant losing valuable perspectives. That partnership required mutual respect, not condescending tolerance. Silence, humanity had proven, could indeed be the loudest statement of all.